Welcome back to the podcast. Sat next to me, ex-teammate of mine, very special guest, and the first member of coaching staff that we've had on the podcast, Danny Kerman. What is the message?
Well, yeah, just at the minute, just doing a bit of coaching now. So finally hung the boots up at the age of 37. Did 3 good years at York, which I really enjoyed, and then gone back to my hometown club, Wakefield, where I'm currently assistant coach with the first team and head coach of the reserve team. So getting a chance to sort of develop my skill set, run my own team with the reserves, which is a really good experience, and then learning from 2 very experienced coaches in Michael Shenton, who's the other assistant, and obviously the head coach, Daryl Powell there. So yeah, really enjoying it. Different sort of challenge, but one that I'm, again, thoroughly enjoying and really relishing the sort of opportunity to grow and develop myself within the game and set new challenges and new goals, really.
Absolutely, and a proper full circle moment going from player at Wakefield to now involved in the coaching staff. Pretty happy with the season so far, I suppose. How are you finding that transitionary role from going from player to then being on the sidelines and delivering messages and being involved in what the team delivers on field, but actually, I suppose you can't really impact it. You can deliver the best messages, have the best weeks of training, but you can't run the ball in or make tackles for the lads. How is that, and how does that differ compared to actually playing?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different. It is challenging, both probably more mentally challenging than anything. I mean, the good thing for us is we have a great group. We've got a really good group of sort of staff, so that's behind the scenes, sort of admin staff. Our analysts very good. We get delivered sort of the best stats that I've ever seen, really. So we're so prepared in our job from that end. The conditioning team are very experienced in Ben Cooper and Jordan Fenterman. And then we've got sort of one of the best physios in the game in sort of Matty Crowther, and then you tie that in with the coaching staff as well, and it's led to a very smooth transition for me. They made me feel very comfortable coming into that role. It was slightly daunting, like you said, delivering messages and things like that, delivering videos or something which were new to me, looking around players that I've played with and played against, and you know, I remember the first time I delivered, they give me a fair bit of stick, and I'm sort of that guy still that can get, you know, I'm last man in, so I'm still the guy who gets some hammer, but that's probably part of the game that you miss more than anything, is that sort of crack with the lads, and I still get a chance to sort of have that sort of bit of the game as well. So it's been daunting, but it's something that I've been really excited about and really enjoyed as well, the sort of challenge of that side of things.
For sure. I remember first time seeing you in a yellow t-shirt running messages. It felt weird. It felt weird. And those first couple of years, I think it's that, like you said, that transitionary period where you go from you're one of the players, you're one of the boys, like you're the OG, you know, you're the senior player, to now you're on the coaching staff, and some of the lads would have played with you, played against you, and then obviously you're now in a position of authority, which is a complete contrast. What I want to touch on is obviously a massively successful season for Wakefield in the Championship last year. Won the whole lot of it. Only lost 1 game all season, and now you're backing it up with a successful start to the Super League season. How big do you think that was, having such a strong, dominant performance after getting relegated the year prior?
Yeah, I think we're always going to be a growing year for the club, really. I think if you look at the sort of transition of ownership and then the amount of players that we brought in, the Championship were always going to be tough last year. And I think people who looked at it and thought it was going to be easy probably underestimated what the Championship is as a competition. You know, it's a very tough, a very physical competition. You go to places where, you know, it's not like going to St Helens or going to Wigan. You know, you're at Barrow away and Workington away and places like that, and they're a challenge in their own right. So it were always going to be a test and something different for a lot of the players, but they approached it in a really professional manner. They dealt with some tough circumstances last year in terms of injuries and things like that. But more importantly, they prepared themselves really well for this year with what they did last year. There were a lot of improvement in a lot of our players. A lot of younger players developed to a point where they became Super League players before they'd played Super League, really. So once we sort of came to Super League this year, we had full confidence in the squad that we'd built, and full confidence in those younger players who developed. I mean, you look at Ollie Pratt, for example, the sort of press and the praise that he's had at the start of the year. the majority of that sort of skill has been built away from the field in training and stuff that he's done with Michael Shenton. But the other side of it is he's had a massive exposure to playing the game because he's played in the Championship for a couple of years with York and then all last year with Wakefield.
For sure, and that's really important. I think it's in the game over here, the Championship's a gift for young players. I think you see a lot more players getting an opportunity at first in the Championship. Like, you still have breakthrough stars who set the Super League alight from 18 years old, but there's a lot more players like Pratty and a lot more younger lads coming through, doing a season on loan or a few games on loan, getting that exposure to big, large bodies, trying to smash in. Like you said, not only the repeat efforts of playing games back to back, week in, week out, but also the complete change of environment that you can be playing on a really nice surface like York or in Toulouse, and then the next thing you know, you're at Batley on a hill, or you're going up to Cumbria and you're getting hammered by the crowd and you're getting called a Super League player and all sorts of names under the sun. I still remember this man slagging me off first time I came down to the Championship. But that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of that exposure. And I think looping back to yourself and your career, like you began playing at Featherstone before you moved on to Huddersfield in the Super League. So your younger years were spent in the Championship as well. Am I right? Or
yeah. So my career sort of developed in a probably not your standard typical way that a Super League player develops. So I played sort of all my junior career at Stanley Rangers, from under sevens right through. Played academy at Wakefield, but I didn't really get a deal there, so I never sort of kicked on in that academy. And then I got the opportunity to go play for Featherstone, and my dad's from Featherstone, and my grandma, she was a massive Fev fan, always used to take me down there to Post Office Road as a kid, so I always watched them as a kid, so they were my team really. So when I got that opportunity, I sort of played for Barlow under 18s, we went on tour to Australia, which were a great experience. We had a couple of other boys that had played Super League, so Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook were in that squad, and we had a great laugh, travelling around as 17, 18-year-olds, for 4 weeks. Were really good. And then I'd sort of signed a deal for when I came back with Featherstone. So came back, they were in the Championship at the time. And luckily for me, one of the wingers got injured. So I pretty much played the full season the first year. Did another year there. We got relegated, so I ended up playing the full season after, in the league below. But in terms of sort of experience, I was playing against sort of ex-Super League players, physical men. I was still sort of 18, 19, probably about 80 kilo wet through at the time, sort of darting about on the wing, or not darting about so much. But yeah, in terms of experience, I played with some players that were sort of from the old school era, and they just sort of let you know what the game were about, really. And I feel really grateful that I got a chance to play with them people like Ian Tonks and Stu Dickens, old school front rowers who, they'd bash you about and let you know what game you were playing. And I think that sort of stood me in really good stead moving forward, the experienced boys that I played with early on.
For sure. And having those, I suppose, role models and those older people to look up onto when you're a young kid coming through, and like you said, that'll keep you accountable and in your place. It's absolutely massive. And you get the opportunity to go to Huddersfield. Like, is that dream come true? Did you always know that you wanted to be a rugby player, or did it just fall in your lap, or was it somewhere in between?
Yeah, I mean, if you play rugby, you want to be a rugby player, really, don't you? It's all you want to do. And I remember being a kid, sort of 7, 8 years old, playing with my brother and my cousin, and we'd be out for hours playing, whether it's a Challenge Cup final or the Ashes or something like that, out on the park, and you'd go one-on-one for hours. And yeah, I always wanted to be it. My dad played rugby sort of semi-professionally. But it were always just a dream, really. And I know that's sort of cliche when you say, oh, you've lived your dream, but it genuinely was a dream to me. Like I said, I didn't really develop till later on. And I'd gone and done my A-levels, so I went to Pontefract College, did my A-levels in media, law, sports, and psychology. Wanted to go on to uni, sort of thought I'll just be a teacher, because obviously 18, I'm not playing anywhere as such, just playing amateur. And then ended up part-time at Featherstone. So I went off to uni, ended up getting the deal at Huddersfield. So quit university. It took me a couple of weeks to let my mum know. And my dad, my mum were crying, saying, rugby's not a real career. Not many people get a chance to do that. So I want you to stay at uni, and I'd already quit to take up the opportunity. So Yeah, it kind of it were actually my agent who I had all my career who approached me with the offer. He said, "Oh, I've got a deal for you. Some Huddersfield are interested in you coming to Huddersfield." So obviously the chance to go and be full time and do that as a career was something that I jumped at, and I loved it. It was a great experience from the very get go, really. Although the first session that I did go home and say to my dad, "I'm not sure if I want to do this, Dad." We ended up doing a gym blitz. I used to do it at Huddersfield quite a bit. It's like 200 metre row, 20 up downs, 20 power clean and press, and then you do 400, 18, 18, 600, 16, 16, right to 1,000 and all the way down to 10.
Stinks of Greg Brown, that.
Oh, well, it was before Brownie, actually, but it was one of the hardest sessions that I've ever done. I mean, I look at it now and I wouldn't even have a crack at it for the laugh of it, but yeah, that probably set me up a little bit and let me know just how tough it was going to be, really. But it was a great experience going to Huddersfield. Obviously, a bit of a different club in terms of sort of the fans and stuff there, the atmosphere. Obviously, in a massive stadium, but again, just the players that I played with and the coaches that I worked under there really just give me such an insight into the game and a will to do better, really.
Absolutely. I think I really relate to what you're saying about the university thing. When I came on trial at Huddersfield, same as you, got an opportunity at Huddersfield, 17 years old, I got offered like really, really good universities back in Ireland. I got offered universities over here, but I got offered UCD, so anyone back home listening, it's a very good university in Dublin, got offered a good course, and obviously I was on trial at Huddersfield. Had no interest in it. No interest in going to university, which I do think deep down, and the mother may disagree when she's listening to this. Deep down, I think she was like, "What on earth are you thinking? Like rugby league, it's not played in Ireland. It's not a career choice in Ireland. No one goes and playing rugby league. Like it's no one even knew what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? It's non-existent. It's not like, you can go be a lawyer or a doctor, you can go be a professional footballer, you can go do an electrician, but being a rugby league player was not a career path because there wasn't a path to walk. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to go to this really good, prestigious university. I'm going to go to the north of England and go on trial for a team that I don't even know if I'm going to get paid for. I don't even know if I'm going to make it, but you know what? That's what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And the mother was like, I think she was a bit stressed out. But obviously, sat here now, you look back in hindsight, 2020 hindsight, and you go, it worked out, and that's the same for you. You look back and you probably never thought, geez, why didn't I become a teacher? Maybe when you're injured or things aren't going your way, but you've looked back on your great career and probably never thought, geez, I really wish I went to university there when you rolled that dice. But in the moment, when you come back from doing 20,000 power cleans and loads of rowing, you're thinking, Jesus, that nice warm lecture hall doesn't look too bad, I'll drink pints of cider with the lads, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, you probably don't look at it this way when you're younger. You're sort of in the bubble, aren't you? But as I've got older, and especially once you get to 30, everyone's sort of when you're going to retire, and it's like everybody's desperate for you to retire once you get to 30. And I had a couple of job offers when I were around that, and I worked sort of on my days off at the back end of my career with an estate agent, sort of preparing to sort of work after rugby. And I always thought, shall I do another year? And I always felt good enough to do it, but the pressure of people asking me to retire and telling me I should be retiring was sort of making me think about retiring. But I sort of took a step back, and I just think you can do any job any time in your life, really, but you can't be a rugby player any time in your life. Once you are over 30, you've only got a little bit of time left. So if you sort of hang them up too early, or you give up on that dream too early, you can't go back. It's something that you can never go back and do. So you waste a year of rugby and you take that time off, you can't get that back. Whereas if I'm not an estate agent for a year, or I have 5 years off being an estate agent, or any job like that, really, I can go back and do that when I'm 50. I can go to uni when I'm 50 if I want to. I'll look a bit out of place, but you can still do them sort of things. Whereas if you're interested in playing sport and you've got that talent to play sport, you have to do it now, because it goes so quick. And I was lucky to play from being 18 to 37, and I'm a lot luckier than a lot of people. A lot of people don't get that length of career, and this is what I kind of try and get across to the reserve players and the younger players now is, you have got to take that chance while it's there, because it goes in the blink of an eye, and I've been that blink of an eye. It goes really quick. So if you want to do it, you've got to dedicate everything to it. And you know, I think that kind of ties into why people struggle when they finish a lot of the time as well, is you don't want to think about anything else. If you're in that bubble is all that matters. And that's why you're the best at it, really, because you dedicate everything to it. So when people are saying, oh, you need to do a course and you need to think about what you're going to do after, you can't think about what you're going to do after, because all you want to do is that. It's difficult.
Yeah, you have to be all in. You can't have one foot out the door. And you see it all too often as well when there's too much going on in people's lives, or if they're not all in, you quickly fall away from the top. Especially and I've probably been guilty of that when I've been in a Super League environment, thinking this is never going to end. Do you know what I mean? Like when I was full time, I just thought, yeah, you can just get away with being a young lad, but you're not a young lad for long. All of a sudden, you've been full time for 2 years, and people are like, what? Have you not played yet? Or what are you doing? Like you have to sort of go and grab that shot for yourself and make it happen. And I've come to look back on my time spent at Huddersfield and maybe go, well, I could have been a bit more proactive with my actions and just been a bit more of a goer. But that's a lesson in itself, you know. And I think that you're testament to that with your professionalism, and that's why you had a near 20-year career, and that's why you're where you are now, back doing what you love, being involved in the sport, because you can pass that wisdom on. So when you're saying to these reserve lads, listen, lads, grab the opportunity with two hands, like it may feel like it's falling on deaf ears, but if one of them listens and they kick on to have a long career, like it's worth your while. So you're at Huddersfield, you're getting the opportunity to play Super League now. On the wing still? Or have you moved into the back row yet?
Yeah, I didn't spend long on the wing.
Yeah, so, you only go inwards. Anyone only go, you don't go back out.
Yeah, so I did, I played one game on the wing, a friendly at Hull FC. It was away, a night game. And the half-back, he was an Aussie guy, Adam Dykes, he was called. And I came off the bench with about 10 minutes left. So obviously, you know, you're basically a touch judge on the wing, aren't you? So I've been sat on the bench all the time, and I've come on to sort of take over from the touch judge on the far side, and they've put about 3 bombs up, and obviously you can hear the pitter patter of their feet coming to get you while you're under that kick, and you know they're getting closer. And I think I've dropped all 3 of them. And I had a meeting with the coach, John Sharp, in the week, and he said, "Look, I think you'd be a good back rower." I think what he meant really was, you're not a very good winger, so we'll try you somewhere else. And I played a few games in the reserves off the back of that, so I was training both full-time and then training reserves, just to sort of aid in my development of becoming a back rower, really. And ended up playing a couple of games in the middle, just coming off the bench, and they just basically said, just go crazy, run around, you know, go and enjoy it. So I played a few games there. And then the coach, John Sharp, he got the sack, and Paul Anderson and Kieran Patel took over. And I played like 10 games after they took over at the back end of my first season. So it was a real success, really, to be fair, the first year. I didn't think I'd play many games, and I ended up played 17 games that first season. So it was good, yeah, in the back row, and a little bit of middle as well.
In the mixer. So that's obviously a massive transition from coming off the wing, and now you're playing in the pack, and obviously it suited you well. He's seen something in you. Maybe it was that you couldn't catch bombs, but whatever it was, it worked, and it worked very well because you had a long career in the back row. You then went out on loan initially to Wakefield before signing there permanently. What's going through your head when you get to play at your hometown club?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it came off the back of a real tough time, to be fair. So I did my ACL in 2009. And probably one of the biggest parts of my career, that, because I did it in the week before we played in the Challenge Cup final. So a massive disappointment, obviously, and missing out on sort of, like I said before, that game that you've played it in your head as a kid, really. And I missed that. But obviously the injury in itself is a difficult injury to sort of deal with. So I had 6 months out, and then as I was coming to the back end of the injury and recovery, I had a meeting with Nathan Brown, the coach at the time, and he said, "Oh, look, we're trying to sign Danny Brough, but Wakefield want a player in sort of part of the deal to come back over there." And I'd not even done any contact training or anything after my ACL, so I'm like, well, I'm not going to be much good. But I met with Wakefield. John Keir was the coach at the time. Knew a couple of the players that played there. Obviously, I lived just up the road. And yeah, it was a funny one, really. I kind of felt a little bit disappointed that Huddersfield wanted me to go, But at the same time, I thought, you know, if Wakefield want me, then that's also a good thing. And I did see it just as a loan at the time, to be fair. So I had a meeting with the owners at Wakefield, with my agent, and we agreed to go on loan. It was a short negotiation, but we managed to come out on top and ended up there. I trained one day with him, and John Keir said to me, "We're playing Warrington tomorrow. Do you fancy a run out, Kermo?" And I said, "Well, I haven't really done much contact." Or Johnny said, "Well, we'll get you a bit today in training." And I did a bit, and I played the day after. So I played after sort of 6.5 months after my ACL, which is pretty quick. And yeah, I loved that year. I think we won one game all year on loan at Wakefield, but I genuinely mean this. It was one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've had. Just the group of men that played there. There was such a good crack. It was a mix of like young guys, but then real experienced guys. And again, like I said before about the Featherstone team, it was probably the back end of the old era. We had people like Paul King and Paul Cook played there, Richie Moore, Michael Corkidas, people like that. As well as, you know, tie that in with some players like Jason Demetriou and Sam Hobbs and some really talented players as well. I mean, the other guys were talented in their own right, but you know, from that older era. But yeah, I just loved it. It was just such a good crack, and John Keir himself was just a real good coach to get you going. Such a man manager, you know, heart on his sleeve, really fiery and emotional, and I loved that at the time.
It's absolutely savage. Just touching on the ACL, obviously 6.5 months. You're getting thrown in the deep end, going, "Oh, we'll do a bit of contact today at training," like completely different to how it is now. Player management and things like that. 6.5 months back from an ACL is insane comeback, and you're thrown right into the deep end there. And obviously, you said you touched on how much of a dark time that was, missing out on the Challenge Cup final, which is, like you said, it's what dreams are. You dream of playing in big games. Like that's why your career is. And you probably look back on your career and remember the big games. You don't remember the week in, week out fixtures at time, or what happened when you went to St Helens on a Friday night in the middle of the season. But you remember those big games. Missing out on that, and obviously recovering, and then you get sent out on loan. Like that's obviously. How are you feeling going through that? Because that's not easy. And I know from personal experience, like when I got told I was coming up on loan season long at York, I was obviously excited to get a season long loan, but I hadn't even come in for day one of pre-season, and I got the phone call in the off season saying you're going on season long loan to York. I had a year left on my contract in Huddersfield, and I was like, well, that's great. York are an exciting team in the Championship. I was like, you haven't even let me come in and have a crack. So like when you're coming back from injury, you're probably thinking, oh, like I want to get back in. I want to play here for Huddersfield. I want to show that I've come back well. And then you get told, all right, get yourself out on loan. You're probably thinking you're a bit pissed off. Like,
yeah, I think one thing that I always think is there is good in everything, and you know you've got to look sort of hard enough to find it sometimes. But no matter what, and I've been in some situations in my life more recently where you probably realise that more than anything, you know, in that loan at the time. I'll be honest, Nathan Brown was really honest with me, which I think helped. He was right, really. He just said, look, we've signed some back rowers, you're not going to play, but I want you to go on loan and play, and then if it goes well and you're playing well enough, then you come back and you'll be in. He did say to me, once you've done your ACL, you never really get your speed back, and that's one of your main assets. So it's interesting to see how you come back. And I'm like, well,
cheers.
Yeah, and to be fair, after I'd left, I caught up with Brownie, and he apologised to me. He said, I didn't think you'd come back as well as you did, and I'm sorry for saying what I did to you. I should have probably backed you a little bit more. But at the time, I was just grateful for how honest it was, because I think there'd be a few coaches that I've worked with that would probably sort of shimmy around that in some way, and you know, I'd end up with the same sort of result in being on loan, but I wouldn't have known why I was on loan. Whereas he just fronted it up, and he were great, and I was disappointed, but more than anything, I was just excited to get back from my injury. Really, I think through the injury, I'd gone through some real tough times. Really, I had a partner at the time who kind of liked partying when I was injured, so that kind of tied in pretty well. And I ended up probably partying a little bit too much at the start. They gave me some time off, and I went away.
Where'd you go?
I went to Dominican Republic, and I put about 8 kilos on, and my flight got delayed on the way home. And I hate being late for things, and I was a day late back. And they didn't even let me see the team the first day back. They just sent me to Total Fitness with Greg Brown, and he flogged me so hard. And I'd literally I've never been a big drinker, but with my ex-partner, I had hammered the grog on this holiday, and Greg Brown made me feel every last drink of it. Honestly, I was just like, wow. And then obviously I made a few changes when I come back from that. Really dug into my rehab, changed things in my personal life a little bit, and came back from it really well. But yeah, there were sort of times in it, because with an ACL, you have days where you think, this is going great, I can run today. And then you'll have days where you think it's never going to come good. And I had a mix of both, but I think it's like anything, you stick at it and stick to the process, and more than anything, follow the people who know better than you do. Because, I mean, we had really good physios at the time and good conditioning staff, and they helped me massively through it all, really.
Absolutely. I think I can relate to that so much. My first injury, I did my cinders up at Whitehaven. Were you playing that game?
Yeah,
I did my cinders up at Whitehaven, and I was still at Huddersfield because I was on loan at the time. Went away, got my operation, so I was doing my rehab at Huddersfield, and we got the weekend off. So I said, can I go? I know I'm in rehab. Can I go back to Ireland, spend a bit of time with my family? Ate too much. Mother fed me too much. Went for too many pints with the lads. And I remember at the time, we hadn't weighed in weeks. And obviously, you come back off weekend off, weigh in. I knew I was going to be heavy just because I'd been drinking. And you learn in your career that's probably not what you should do when you're coming back from injury. But the first time you get injured, you don't you're probably not thinking like that. You know, you're like, geez, you're looking at the road ahead of you, and you go, fuck, your age is off, I'll just have a few pints, you know. So I had a few too many pints, ate a bit too much food, and I came in at 107 kilos. I've never weighed that in my life. I think that was the only day I weighed that. 107 kilos at my height. And I was still training the gaff down. I was doing all upper body weight. So I was jacked, but I was just so heavy. And obviously GB got hold of me. I ended up in Fat Club, and I was looking at this Fat Club, and I was like, I'm not fat. Get me out of here. But I had 2 weeks where, until I was back down at my normal weight, 103 kilos, I was getting absolutely flogged. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, why did I do that? I was like, how? I just couldn't believe I was tapping, when you're tapping the scale, you're taking off your top and you're stripping. Fuck off, I'm not 107 kilos. But yeah, I can completely relate to that. It's a bad place to be in when you end up getting that flogging, and you can't see the end in sight. You cannot see the end in sight. But there are lessons learned as well. That was probably your first major injury in your career, was it?
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the biggest, doing an ACL, and you look back on it and you go, geez, that was dumb in the Dominican, putting on loads of weight. I look back on my cinders and I go, I probably would have been back quicker if I came back a little bit lighter. And then you feel better when you're running, but it's all lessons learned. You don't know that. And as I always say, it's 20/20 hindsight. But if you do it again, then you're an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you do it once and you go, geez, I was stupid there and I paid for it, I was on the rower for hours, you go, right, lesson learned. If you do it 2, 3, 4 times, you go, when are you going to learn from this? Do you know what I mean? But like you said, everything that happens, it gives you an opportunity if you look at it the right way. If you frame something right in your head, everything's an opportunity, and it just depends on how you look at it. And for me at the time, going on loan at York again, it gave me that massive opportunity to sign a contract up there and then kick on my career in the champ. For you probably didn't know it at the time, but that loan to Wakefield obviously kicked on your Wakefield career. But before we dive into that, you mentioned Nathan Brown, you mentioned John Keir. The power of coaches and how they speak to players is huge. You're involved in coaching staff now. What lessons have you learned from good quality coaches, and who do you think was the most impactful on your career? Because I feel like a good coach who's direct, who tells you honestly, that's huge.
Yeah, I think I touched on it before about Nathan Brown's honesty. I think that to me is the most important thing, is honesty in how you deliver, but also honesty with yourself. You've got to put the real you across. I think if if you fabricate a character to be a coach, then it's never going to work. You're not going to hold your integrity. And I think when you're delivering to 30 blokes, they pick up on everything, and they pick up if it's real as well. So first and foremost, you've got to be yourself. If you're yourself and you're honest, then I think you'll often get the respect that you deserve. And you've got to work hard behind that as well. And the best coaches that I've had all have both of those. Really, they work really hard and they're honest. I think Nathan Brown was probably the best coach in terms of tactics and what he'd deliver and how he'd come up with things to win a game and break down a game. He used to come up with plays on a Monday and Tuesday for the week coming, and you'd be like, this is crazy. And it'd come off all the time. He was really good with sort of kick plays. So we had players like Brett Hodgson and Kev Brown, and they'd come up with plays all the time. I remember the Challenge Cup semi-final, they did a kick play off a scrum, I think it was, and scored, which won us the game. And things like that. So he was really smart. He was a great bloke as well. The first couple of years he brought the team together really well. And then I'd probably say Richard Agar as well, from what he did that first couple of years at Wakefield. We had 17 new players, 17 no-hopers really. Everyone had been released or sacked, or they'd done something wrong somewhere and ended up at Wakefield, and he turned it into a team in sort of no time at all. And we ended up making the playoffs first year, which were incredible really. If you looked at the squad, everyone was tipped in us to finish rock bottom, and we just become a bit of a brotherhood. It were great. You just knew everyone were going to turn up for each other and work hard. And some of the lads we had in that team were absolutely mental. It was the maddest group of people I've ever played with. But again, one of the best groups as well. Just how everyone bought in and sort of bought into. It wasn't even the club, I suppose. I think it was just the group that they brought into, and the main reason that happened was Rich. Rich was just super smart with it, super honest, let everyone know what was expected of them. Didn't sort of try and take away anyone's characteristics, anyone's traits that they had. He realised that, someone might need to go out and blow off some steam, but he always made sure somebody went with him and looked after him. Tim Smith, full on, he's probably one of the better players that I've ever played with, Timmy. Unbelievable. And at the time, he probably had a few issues, and he liked to go out, but one of Richard's rules was no one left him on his own, so you'd often end up out with Tim having a few beers and making sure that we all got home safe. But it were a great group of people, and I just genuinely loved the time there at that time.
Were you left as security? Were you the dad of the group getting sent out, or were you the old rubber arm? Oh no, take me out! Oh, not again!
No, it was Matty Wildy actually. Matty plays at Oldham now, and he was one of the younger boys, but probably the most sensible. And he were always the one. I think all the wives had Matty's number. The coaching staff definitely had him on speed dial. And he'd always be the one who had to drive out and pick the boys up. So, he picked Paulie Ayton up a few times. Paulie were from Papua New Guinea. And great bloke, great player. But wow, at the time, he were someone who could have a good go on the drink. But we had a full group of them, really. And I'd put myself in that. We worked hard for each other, but we played hard together as well.
And that's sometimes the best way, isn't it? I think, touching on our time at York together, if you look at the team that we had, it's not like it wasn't good. We had some individual talents, but by the back end of the year, you're playing out in the centres. We have young kids scattered all over the park, teenagers. And I just think, being honest, we just all had a red hot crack for each other. And there was some individual brilliance dolloped in within that team where there's no way we should have made the playoffs in 2023. And we did, and I think that year, obviously, that was your last year, but the boys were just having a dig. And having a team that may not always be the superstars on paper, that have a red hot crack for each other, sometimes outdoes talent and coaching and tactics, and you just have a load of lads who, some lads love getting on the piss with each other, and that sometimes is more having that togetherness than having a team full of talent that you look at on paper and people go, oh, geez, they never really lived up to it, did they? Because they have all the individuals, but there's no togetherness. And that often comes to more because at the end of the day, when you're in a shit fight and you're defending your third set on your try line, all the talent in the world can't get you out of that. It's just grit and determination sometimes, and that's what matters most.
Yeah, yeah, and if you can build a group where you're not always going to like everybody, are you? When there's 30 odd blokes, there's not everyone's going to be different, are they? But I think if you can build a respect for each other, and often you do that on the training field, but away from it as well. I mean, we had a very different group, didn't we, at York? I say to people all the time, I've never met a rugby team with many people who don't drink in it, but we always had a really good time and a good crack together.
A coffee team,
yeah,
some may call it.
Yeah, that's which it was a bit strange to me, really. And I'm a terrible drinker. I'm useless. I don't drink an awful lot. We don't really drink at home. I drink even less now I've got the kids, so I'm an even worse drinker than I was before. But yeah, I was surprised with how many of the boys didn't drink, but I felt like we respected each other for what we all were. We respected each other's differences, and we all came together and worked hard. And if you enjoy company of somebody, or you enjoy being around someone, you're going to work harder for them. And I think, we sort of took it on ourselves as players, really. We were kind of a bit of a player bubble, wasn't it, that year? And like I said before, I just thought everybody worked really hard and enjoyed each other's company, which made it a successful team. Really. I think, did we win 12? I think we won 12 in a row, didn't we, back end of season, and ended up just falling short in playoffs. But they were great years, the years at York. I loved it. Met some great people, some different people. But yeah, that were a really good year. I thought proper enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that you brought in was the pressure cycle. You brought the pressure. that really helped us.
That's Jesse D. He still talks to me all the time.
Was it Jesse who brought that in? Yeah,
I've not quite got it, but he keeps trying to explain it to me.
Oh, I see. But yeah, that was massive for us at York. And reeling it back to your time at Wakey, obviously, when you're coming to the back end of that full time, you obviously finish off your career at York. There's that transitionary period, but you'd obviously started to get your foot in the door with a few different bits. You had the pub at this stage before you went part time. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I did. I bought it just before I finished at Wakefield. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, you begin your transition period. You've finished up full time. You've had some great years. Wakefield legend. Everyone loves you there. But the time to finish up with full time.
So I mean, I'd always had a sort of keen interest in property, more residential really than commercial. Probably since I sort of met Nina, my wife. I just enjoyed my money before I met Nina, but she's very good, very smart with money, and she sort of pointed me in the right direction with a few things. And so I'd invested in a couple of residential properties while I was still full time, and then as I was coming to the back end, we got the opportunity to buy a pub, which I never really wanted to buy a pub. Like I said, I don't drink an awful lot, I don't go out too much, so a pub was a kind of a weird purchase, but it's basically the local rugby club in Charleston, so kind of tugged on my heartstrings a little bit like that. Loads of building developers were interested in buying it, and obviously they'd have just knocked it down, so there'd have been no home for the club. And the club at Charleston, they never had a junior set up when I was a kid, so I had to play somewhere else. And my uncle sort of built the junior set up from there, right from the ground up. So they've got nearly every age group now. So there was sort of that side of it. And me and Nina just decided that we'd buy it, really. So we bought the pub, and obviously COVID hit. So then all the staff went and got other jobs at sort of supermarkets and stuff like that. So once the pub's opened, then we've ended up having to run this bloody pub, which, wow, it's not a hobby really. You've got to love that, because it's a full-on game. I mean, I've been wrestling women out at 1 o'clock, scrapping in toilets, and it's covered in steak and emptying urinals, and I'm just like, what the heck have we done here? But I mean, it's a great purchase. I look at it and I see the kids playing rugby there, and I just think, to be in a position to be able to do that because of what we've done with other things, we're really good. And yeah, more than anything, it's a long-term investment. I've got a tenant in there at the minute. She's doing a really good job, and she's great for it. She does love it, not like me. She loves it, and she's always wanted a place of her own to run. And she, I feel happy that I've been able to sort of let her do that. But yeah, I won't be rushing back in behind the bar, although I do pull a really good pint of Guinness.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I'll hold my hand up. As long as I've known you, you've told me you've done a good Guinness there, and I've not been to have one yet. But like you said, like there's not a hell of a lot of drinking when we're up at York. That's the thing. And, and probably, I think for you, it probably was a bit of a bit different, wasn't it? Like you've come from like you mentioned at Fev, and you've been around those old school players and the old school era, and that's why everyone used to call you OG. You know what I mean? But you've come to York, then obviously there's all these young faces, like completely different characters to what you're used to. And like I feel for myself, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I caught the real back end of like some old school players. Like when I got to Huddersfield, it was still like that. But it's like the post-COVID kids who've come through are completely. I look at them differently, and they're only a couple of years younger than me. It's like when I was at Huddersfield, you wouldn't sit where someone's meant to sit, or you wouldn't be like a right cocky. But like now, it's different again, and you probably see that with your reserves and the young lads coming through. But you come to York, and you're probably thinking, were you thinking what's going on here? Like what's doing, or were you just sort of like right transitionary period here, a couple of years in the champ?
Well, I loved it, to be fair. I mean, I'm very sort of I'm pretty laid back, and I'm very self-aware, obviously about myself, but I'm also like really open to be what you want to be and do what you want to do. And the game's changed so much, and people have changed so much in normal life. I mean, going back to the Featherstone times, I remember I've mentioned him before, Ian Tonks, but I went out with him a couple of times, and he used to drink half a Guinness and a gin and tonic, and he'd down one and then drink the other. I think he'd down the Guinness and then sip the gin and tonic, and I went out with him a couple of times doing that. And that was sort of my apprenticeship, really. And I think that's where I got the acceptance from. But now the game's changed, hasn't it? Because everything, we talk about things being accessible, and more than anything, professionalism's accessible, isn't it? You can go on and you can see what, for example, you can go on and see what Caelan Ponga does through the week, or Nathan Cleary does through the week. And before, you couldn't really do that. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to go and actually see it. Whereas now with social media, you can do that. You can go on, you can get a program, you can get a diet, and everything's so accessible. And I think players now, especially young players, the good ones, or the ones that want it a lot, realise that to be at the top, that's what you have to do. Whereas we didn't have that. We looked at what are these good players doing, and a lot of them were going out and drinking. So I can see why things have changed a lot. But on me going to York, I loved it. I mean, one thing that did rattle me, we played Newcastle away, and I think Miles Harrison played, and it might have been Toby played as well, and their ages added up together were less than me, and I thought, that's not a great sign for me. So Toby Warren and Miles Harrison, it was, and I'm like, wow, I'm old. I'm very old now. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And, like I said, I was doing other things away from that, so it became just a hobby, really. And I probably enjoyed those 3 years that I had at York more than I'd enjoyed the 5 before that. It had become not a job, but it become a stress. Like everything's, when it's full time, everything's analysed, everything's scrutinised. And as the captain and someone that lives in the area at Wakefield, it sounds mad this, but you couldn't get away from it. I go shopping, and it's, I'm not Cristiano Ronaldo. There's not 40 people, 500 people waiting outside Sainsbury's taking pictures, but it might be 1 or 2, and I'm trying to just do a shop and be in my own headspace, and someone will pull you up and be like, bloody hell, what's happened at weekend? Can't you get them going? And I'm like, I just couldn't really switch off. And part of that was me, really. I didn't have the sort of capacity to switch off myself, whereas I learned towards the real back end just how to do that, really, and more just to be able to enjoy me. I think when you're a rugby player, everyone sees that rugby player, and I think sometimes you become Danny Kerman, the rugby player, whereas you're not always that. You know, it's an act a lot of the time, isn't it? You go across that white line and you can do what you want, you can be who you want to be, but sometimes I think don't even get entangled, really. I think that takes a lot over the real person sometimes. And I think at times I probably let that happen, I think, which caused a bit of conflict, a bit of stress in my life, really. Whereas now I feel really comfortable with who I am, comfortable in making decisions and comfortable just saying no to stuff sometimes. Whereas when I was captain of Wakefield, if you would have asked me to come and open an envelope for you in Wakey town centre, I'd have come and done it. Like, I just couldn't say no.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from that is knowing who you are and going through that journey of self-discovery and sort of looking inwards, that you're Danny Kerman, the husband, the father, the pub owner. You know, you're not just that box of rugby player, which, like you said, at times it's hard to switch off from. And that, even for me as a younger player, that's been something that I've had to go through, that find out who I am away from the game, and that when I'm on, and when you're off, you can switch off. And I say this all the time, I still struggle massively with switching off from it, but you have to. And just talking about that, like, obviously the pressure of being a captain, being local to the area, and trying to find that, strike that balance, really, that you can go to the shop and you can actually step away from the game. What would you say the biggest thing, or what has helped you most to find what you need to do to step away from that headspace? And or what was it that you found at York, besides not being full time, that helped you step away from that? Like, I know for me, I always say when I go to the cinema, that's the only time I fully switch off, because the phone, you're not on your phone, and you're just there, and I usually end up falling asleep just because it's the only place where I've actually gone, right, I've just sat still for an hour and a half and now I'm asleep. Look, I must be bollocks. Like, well, what was it for you that helped you, like, separate things? Because that can't have been easy, like being in your hometown club, being the captain, and people just asking, like you said, just asking you what's going on. Like, it's not easy to get away from it at times.
Yeah, I think probably a good judge of it is probably how your partner would talk about you, I reckon. Because I'm a lot different now when I come home from games, obviously, as a coach, or when I were at York, than I would have been whenever out at Wakefield, and that's right up until the end, really. You know, I'd be bad for 3 or 4 days, whereas now, like, Nina knows that when I come home, I'm all right and I'm me again. And I'd say probably, and this is late on, probably having kids, I reckon. My eldest, Nelly, she's 5 now, so, you know, this is right at the back end of my Wakefield career. And I think you just realise that there are things that are more important, and at times you don't think there is, and that's probably why you have success in it, I suppose. It doesn't mean that you'll always be happy, and at the other side of it doesn't mean that you're always miserable either, because I loved probably 80% of my time as a full-time player, and especially as captain at Wakefield. It was something that I was really proud to do. But there is hard times in there, but yeah, things that have happened in my life, really. So having children, and then sort of when I lost my brother, that was probably something that just, I mean, don't get me wrong, that it was the hardest time in my life by a massive distance. But when I lost my brother, 3 days later, I had my second child. So she was born like 3 days after, and I was like, this is such like a conflicting thing, but at the same time, it really drew me into what were important, and probably more than even wider family, just my wife and my 3 kids now. I've just had a little boy as well. It just made me realise that they are everything, really, and everything I do is for them, but not just for them, for me as well, because they saved me, really, at that time. I remember sort of at the time I'd be in the kitchen sort of crying and just thinking about things, and Nelly, my eldest, she'd come running in, and straight away, like, you can't, and I'm not saying I didn't deal with it and I wasn't upset, but you can't pass that on to them when they're that age. So they've definitely been something that's made me probably more even self-aware than I ever have been, but also just have a respect for what's important to you. And I won't change anything about my rugby career at all, but at the same time I probably wish I could have gone back and enjoyed it a little bit more, because at times I was just like, what I've got to do is got to do that, or we've lost, that's the end of the weekend, we're It's not, is it? You can go and you can enjoy stuff still and go and spend time doing other stuff. And I didn't really do that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so admirable hearing you say that. And I remember, I remember when that happened, and you played that weekend, didn't you? And I was just like, I was hats off, and I was so, yeah, like in admiration of how strong and how tough and what a credit to your character, being able to go through that and then pull on a shirt and do that for yourself. And mate, it was crazy. It was crazy at the time, and I couldn't have imagined what you were going through. And then seeing you just being able to wear the world on your sleeve that weekend or that game, and mate, it was incredible, and it can't have been easy.
Yeah, it wasn't really, but as daft as it sounds, it was probably the easiest thing that I did that week, really. I mean, it was just like a real whirlwind of emotion, really. And I remember obviously when it happened, but I remember speaking to Fordy a couple of days after. And at the time, we had a really good liaison officer from the police. And she sort of said, look, I wouldn't advise you to go to work, but I would advise you to play rugby if it's something that you feel up to. And I spoke to Fordy, and obviously he's quite emotional, he's Fordy, and he was pretty cut up. And he said, look, come training, but you don't have to play. And I was like, well, if I'm coming training, mate, I want to play, really. And I remember we played Bradford, and it were hard, but mate, to be honest, mate, it was just an escape. And I think sometimes sport is that. You know, we talk about the pressure and stuff like that, but I think when you view it in the right way, it's escapism in its best form. And I needed it. I really needed it. Where I live is it's an old school community, and everything was just so intense on what had happened. It was really tough, just like dealing with it all in terms of my family, my mum and dad. Obviously I lost my brother, which is ridiculously hard in itself, but then seeing your parents have to go through that as well were tough. It was weird, really, because the incident happened, but my brother were in the army for 10 years, and he was daft as anything, and he'd signed the donor register twice to donate his organs from when he were in the army. So after he'd been hit, he was sort of in an induced coma, but he was non-responsive, but his heart was still beating. So they were like, oh, because he wants to donate his organs, they kept him alive. So his heart was beating, but they kept him breathing so he could donate his organs. So he was in LGI for a few days. And obviously everyone was sort of there visiting him. And then they took him to theatre to donate his organs, which is something that, I mean, I'm really happy that he got to do what he wanted to do with that. But it gave my mum and dad a lot of comfort, really. So you get a letter once they give organs like that. So I think a guy got his liver. He wrote a letter to my mum and dad saying how grateful he was. Someone got his heart that had been on the register for a while, and they were in risk of dying. So like, even though what happened, he sort of lives on through other people, really, and what he wanted to do. And yeah, that was quite a nice touch from me, I suppose.
Yeah, that's special, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, I suppose.
No, it's not a tangent, no. It's special, that, and it's massively important to be able to, well, one, to share that, but to be able to, I suppose you can see the silver lining and everything, and that again, that's credit to you. And I think to echo everything that you've said so far is that there is always some form of silver lining, no matter what. And when you're dealt a crazy curveball, it's something in life that you need to learn how to roll with the punches sometimes, and to be able to adapt that, and that no matter what you're going through, to be able to see that glass half full, it's a massively important outlook, isn't it? And you always said this to me when I was I was 22, 22 when I met you, and you always used to say perspective. Perspective is reality. It's all your perspective, isn't it? It's how you look at things. Do you know? And maybe I used to laugh about it a little bit, but like at the time, I don't think well, initially when I first met you, I didn't appreciate your wisdom, and as we shared the field more, and I appreciated it more towards the back end. I was like, shit, we're losing a really wise leader here in Carmo, and that perspective thing is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's same with anything, you know, you drop your coffee on the morning and spill it. That could ruin the rest of your day if you wanted to. But at the same time, you can just go knock another coffee up and your day's great, isn't it? Everything is exactly that, really. It's, you know, you create your own day, really, with how you're feeling. And if you're feeling, if I wake up some days and I think I can't get out of bed here, I can't get going, and I'll go out for a run or I'll have half an hour with kids, and you're all right, aren't you? I think it's really important, like, to find something that can just kickstart you, really. And, you know, that might be anything. It might just be sitting in the garden with a cup of tea. It might be watching This Morning. It can be absolutely anything, but something that just makes you feel all right. And, I mean, you look outside, it's sunny, it's good. Like, life is good, innit? We're all right. And there's things that go on in life, but just, like, find some enjoyment in it. Like, I feel like it can crush you down, can't it? You know, the negativity and stuff that's out there, but there's always something good. Even in the worst of times, there's always something good. Yeah, I mean, wow, I've done some real mad stuff in my time, and I've been through some crazy times. But no matter how bad it's been, I can always find sort of good stuff. And I think to pass that on to people and help people, especially, you know, sportsmen and rugby players, because if you want to be miserable, you aren't going to go very far in being a sportsman, or you're not going to be very successful in anything. I mean, you look at sort of highly successful people in sort of business and banking, they're never at home. Like, they're never at home, are they? They're out, they're working every hour under the sun, but they must love it. They just enjoy it, and they find the perspective is reality. Yeah. They're not going thinking this is shit. Like,
that's it.
Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, isn't it? That, like, there's always something to look forward to and look on to, and that's the importance of it. To sit in the moment and go, you know what, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy this cup of coffee, or even if something is shit, to go, yeah, this is shit, but I'm going to lean into it. Yeah. Like, no one stands on the try line and goes, oh, this Bronco's going to be great. Yeah. But you just have to go, you know what, like, I'm going to just do it. I'm going to lean into it, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to find some joy in pushing myself hard, you know. And then when the good times come and you're sat with all your best mates and you're on Mad Monday, or you're like, it's Christmas due after a hard pre-season, you go, yeah, this is unbelievable. But it's only good because you've been through the shit, you know what I mean? That makes the high even higher. If you haven't gone to war together, it's not as good. And that's what's the most special thing about rugby, and the bond and the teammates and the memories and everything that it creates, is that you go into the trenches together, so that when you do sit down and enjoy a beer or enjoy a Mad Monday or enjoy a Christmas stew, it's all that much sweeter. Because if you could do it all the time, it wouldn't be great. Like, if you were happy all the time, that would just be your normal state, and then the happiness doesn't feel as good. So you have to go through the lows to enjoy the highs, don't you?
Yeah, but again, if something is shit as well and it keeps being shit, do something else.
Yeah.
Like, there's no harm in that. And that, I think that's the other thing. Sometimes you get stuck in something that you don't want to be doing, so do something else. Like, it sometimes feels like a big decision to do that, but, you know, I've left places. I mean, when I left Wakefield, I left because it was shit. I didn't enjoy it. I was going in and the same shit were happening every day. And I was just like, do you know what? I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. And everyone was like, what do you mean you're leaving? I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving. And I went up to see Michael Carter and I said, look, this ain't working. It's not how it should be. And he let me leave. And I was like, I'd done 10 years at the club and I'd been captain for 8 of those. And I just made a change, and some people thought I was crazy, but at the same time, it made me a lot happier rather than dealing with the same shit I was dealing with every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've just got to make a change on things.
Yeah, you just got to take the plunge and go, you know what, I'm out of here. And it's okay to call something shit. Far too many people nowadays, they try brush over it and go, no, if you're in a shit spot, like it's okay to just go, nah, this ain't for me. Or they hold on, like their hands are bleeding, holding onto the rope. Just let go. If you hate your job, let it go. Try something else. Take the plunge. Like, obviously, I'm not saying ruin your life, but like, be reasonable. Do you know what I mean? If you work in an office and you absolutely can't stand it, stop working in the office. If you can do that, just don't do it. Because like, far too many people are like gluttons for punishment, aren't they? You know, they're setting themselves up to have unenjoyable days. Like, I know for a fact that I have way too much energy to be cooped up and sat in front of a computer. So I do my best to position myself not to do that. Do you know, like I try to do what I do with my online coaching business and with rugby, so that I don't have to do that. And like I'm not great at that now, but hopefully one day that can be what I do. But I know that I can't sit still. Yeah. So there's no point in me trying to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not built for that. So if there is something that you go, you know what, I actually proper hate this, or you're not made for being out on a site. You can't stand getting wet. You hate winters, and they go, don't do it.
Yeah.
Do you know, exactly, you don't need to tee yourself up. And sometimes as well, this is the other thing. People always say that you're better off being in the complete shit that you need to get out of than being in an, all right, it's not so bad. Do you know what I mean? It's not so bad that I want to get out of it, but it's not good enough, so I'm going to just moan about it. You know, like when I decided to come on trial and aim to be a rugby player, it's because I knew what I was in, like back home in Balbriggan in a small town. It's a small town in North County Dublin. You see the same stuff. A lot of the same things happen. And like there'll be people who listen to this. I love Balbriggan. I love going home, but it's a small town. Yeah. Like you see the same things happen. You see it year on year. The people go to the same pub and they do the same thing. And it wasn't for me. I knew, so that was me escaping that, because I knew if I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to just end up being like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I'm just going to end up in this small town working a job that I potentially hate. So that was my route out. But if it was slightly better and I didn't look at that with so much fear, I may not have been so motivated to get away from it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sometimes you've just got to take that risk, haven't you? And again, I think that comes down to like a self-awareness of what you want to do and what you need to be doing for you. I think way too often people do things that they think they should be doing or what other people think they should be doing. And you're never going to be happy really doing that, are you? Again, it comes down to sort of the integrity of it. Like, you know, I'm the same as you really. I struggle sitting in a room on a computer screen. I like to be out meeting people, talking to people, doing things that are a little bit different really. So knowing yourself is the key to everything really. And also just being brave enough to be yourself. And the world we live in today, you know, you can be whatever you want to be, can't you? So if you're going to be anything, just be yourself.
Absolutely. I remember when I began this journey of online coaching, posting videos and stuff like that. And you know yourself, you get absolutely hammered. But I remember you pulled me and you said to me, you said, everyone gets hammered at the start. That's it. Like, that's all right. You just gave me the nod. You said, listen, you're going to cop it. You're going to cop it. And in hindsight, my videos were shit. The stuff I was saying was shit. But I'm glad I went through that shit. Now there's probably still shit. If I look in 2 years and I go, they weren't shit then I haven't improved. Do you know what I mean? But at the time they were terrible. But and the stuff I was saying and what I was doing, but that's all I knew at the time. But you just said, listen, like, people go through this all the time. You used your mate Isaac John as an example, and he's very successful what he's doing now. But at the time, you have to go through that sort of shit period, and you also have to just be who you are. Do you know what I mean? There's no point in me trying to be a quiet, like, cards to myself person. That's not who I am. Some people have that aura, some people don't. Like, it's the same with you. You're an honest professional, and that's who you are. You're a straight talker. And I remember at the time, like, I stood back and, like, if there's anything you ever said to me, it was that. I was like, in that Cormachi means that, you know what I mean? Just keep in the fight, keep in the battle. And it stood to me to this day, because I remember, like, it's so easy to just give up at that initial phase, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like anything. If you're wanting to get to here and you're here, then it's not an elevator, is it? It never goes straight up. There's always a journey, and often it's up and down. And I think especially in our game, the banter is scathing at times, isn't it? But I think because there's so much fear around what you're going to do next, a lot of the time, if someone starts doing it, it looks like it's, you know, something completely out of this world, and people often like to give hammer about that. I mean, I use Isaac as an example with you. I remember he brought out the T-shirts at the start, and everybody were into him and into what he was wearing and stuff like that. And now, you know, his company's massive. He sells out, he vlogs, and I mean, he's into all sorts. But if he'd just give in at the start of that hammer, I mean, Kyle Amor used to absolutely rip him to pieces about it. And to be fair, most of the lads probably did, but he's flying now, and you've got to just, if you believe in something, you just got to stick with it, haven't you? And you know, you're sort of testament to that. You get some right stick at York about your videos, going shopping in Aldi and picking all your York and stuff like that up. And I probably give you a fair bit myself, but deep down, you know, you want people to do well.
And I think that, like, you have to have that banter within a team as well. Do you know what I mean? Like you say, people get the best shoes, the worst shoes, the best haircut, the worst haircut. No matter what, anything different that comes into the changing rooms on an evening, boom, it's like flies to shit, isn't it? You know what I mean? If you have a new bag, new boots, you can have the same boots as someone else, but someone's still slagging you for new boots.
Well,
you know?
I reckon 90% of rugby players have got the rugby wardrobe and then the social wardrobe. You know, you have one for your rugby friends, one for your real friends, and it's pretty plain. And you know, you'll have your sort of generic shoe which you wear to rugby, and then you might have a bit of out there stuff that you wear with your proper mates, so you're a bit safer. But you aren't wearing anything out there with that rugby group.
Yeah, like if there's HR in rugby league, there'd be some serious trouble. Now, life at the minute, coaching, 3 kids, a wife. What does the future, when you look onto it, what excites you the most, and what do you feel like the next step on the journey? Is it too far to look ahead?
No, mate. Yeah, I think I do live very much in the present, day to day sort of way, really. But obviously, I love challenges and like to sort of challenge myself. My job at the minute is very good. It's going really well. Just sort of talking about extending at the minute, so that's something that I'm excited about. But the main thing for me is having that balance, really, around sort of family life and work life. Never really want anything to take over from that, and it never will, really. Obviously, I've got 3 kids, which it's absolute carnage. Got 2 girls, Nelly and Ren, at 5 and 2, and then a little boy, Asa, he's 6 months, and a very demanding wife as well. So home life's great, mate. Love it. The kids are sort of growing and changing all the time. That keeps me young. And stress-free, I'll say. And then work, mate. I think for me, with coaching, it's whatever I'm enjoying it, I'll be good at it. And I really enjoy it at the minute. Work with a really good team, learning all the time. Work with some really good young kids that are coming through and working hard. And like you say, the joy that you see out of kids making that step up and playing. I mean, we had Ellis Lingard play first team last year at 17. Front rower, and I've probably felt as proud of him as I did on my own debut, really, seeing him sort of come through where he'd come from. He's from the same village as me as well, so representing Charleston were good to see, and that probably excites me more than anything, is seeing those kids develop and come through, and hopefully, you know, a couple of them will go on to enjoy the career that I've had, because I look back at the career of playing, and it's something that I really respect. I didn't get it till later on, really, than some kids, and to sort of work before and then go and do that, I think you find a real respect for how good that life is, and hopefully I can sort of guide a few of them boys on to sort of go and do the same thing.
Absolutely. You don't realise how good is it till it's gone. When you've been grafting properly, you don't understand how nice it is to wake up, go to training, and go home and not have a care in the world besides that. Danny Carman, it sounds like it's really coming together, all in full circle now. Finishing off coaching with your hometown club. That was a serious message, my man. Thank you.